The broken slated sky above Chennai was gray that morning. Sundar sat by the old window, staring out at the narrow street below. Stray dogs barked. Women passed with baskets on their heads. The sound of a vegetable vendor's call rose and faded like a song lost in wind. Inside the small one-room house, his mother stirred rice over a coal stove. The smell of burnt wood mixed with boiling dal. Can I skip school today? Sundar whispered. She didn't answer at first. Then she turned around. Her face, dark and worn from years of cooking, and was kind. Sundar, you don't skip dreams, you chase them. He didn't argue. Deep down, he knew school mattered. He just didn't feel ready. Not today. Not after what happened yesterday at school. Sundar wasn't like the other boys. His shoes were torn. His shirt had a rip near the sleeve, and he spoke softly. Too softly for a world that loved loud. Yesterday, the math teacher asked him to solve a problem. He stood, chalk in hand, and walked to the board. Halfway through, his slate fell and shattered. The room laughed. Someone called him poor boy genius. The teacher didn't laugh, but he didn't stop them either. Now, as Sundar walked to school with that memory fresh in his heart, his head was low. He didn't see the girl until she stepped into his bath. She was barefoot, like him. Her dress was too big and her hair was tied in too tight braids. She held out a slate. Take it, she said. He looked up. What? You dropped yours yesterday. I found it. It wasn't his, it was new, smooth, clean. Now it is, she said, then walked off. He stood there, slate in hand, confused and grateful. He didn't know her name. He had never seen her before. But he felt something shift in his chest. He didn't know then. But she would teach him more than any book ever could. The classroom smelled of chalk and sweat. Sundar sat in the back. He didn't like attention. But today he felt different. His hand went up during the science lesson. Not once, but twice. The teacher raised an eyebrow but nodded. When the bell rang. Sundar rushed outside, hoping to see the girl. He scanned the crowd. Boys chased each other with sticks. Girls giggled near the gate. She wasn't there. Days passed. He didn't see her again. Then one afternoon, while walking home, he heard a soft tune. Someone was humming. He turned the corner and saw her, sitting on stone, feeding a stray puppy bits of dry chapati. You found me, she said without looking. I wasn't looking, he said. Yes, you were. They sat in silence. The puppy curled beside her feet. What's your name? Sundar asked. Meena. Thank you for the slate. You'll do great things, Sundar. He blinked. How do you know my name? I hear things. He smiled. Something about her was strange. Not a bad way. In a quiet way. Like she saw things others did in single quotes .me and it didn't go to his school. She said she studied in her own way. She showed him a book with torn pages, filled with neat handwriting. I write what I feel. She said. Her words were simple but deep. Sundar didn't understand all of them, but he listened. Months passed. Meena became his best friend. They met after school, always in secret. She made him think. She challenged him. When he got answers wrong, she didn't laugh. She asked, why he got better at math? Not just numbers, but understanding. Not just memorizing, but seeing patterns. One day, Meena didn't show up. 2 days. 3. He knocked on a nearby tea shop and asked about her. The man looked at him. Meena, she's sick. Her mother took her to the village. Sundar's chest tightened. He had no address. No phone. Just her name and the memory of her laugh. He waited. Weeks turned into months. He still carried the slate. Years later, Sundar sat in a college lecture hall in Vellore. He was different now. Sharper, more confident. But inside, a piece of him stayed soft. A professor noticed. Pichai, why do you pause before speaking? I like to listen first. You won't go far being quiet. Sundar disagreed. He believed listening was powerful. One evening, walking through campus, he saw a girl sitting on the steps. Her hair was short now. Her face older, but the eyes were the same. Meena? She looked up, smiled. Took you long enough, she said. They talked for hours. Meena had lost her father. They moved often. She couldn't go to regular school, but she never stopped learning. She taught herself everything. Why didn't you come back? He asked. I didn't want you to stop moving forward. I waited. I know. They sat under a tree, the stars above them. Sundar, remember something, she said. Intelligence will take you high, but kindness will keep you from falling. He nodded, his throat tight. You'll build things one day, she added. But don't forget to build people too. Those words stayed with him. The next morning, she was gone again. No goodbye. No, just silence. Sundar searched, asked, called every number he could find. No one knew her. He focused on his studies, but his heart carried the weight of her absence. He didn't see her again. Not for many years. But one day, deep in a cold office in Silicon Valley, with Google stamped across the glass door, he would hear her name again. Not from a friend, not from a stranger, but from a forgotten file. A name that had followed him across oceans. And what he'd find next would shake everything. Asterisk. The name that shouldn't exist under Pichai often sat in silence at the end of long meetings. His fingers gently pressed against each other, eyes narrowed, as if watching invisible patterns in the air. Even in a room filled with some of the brightest minds in Silicon Valley, he often seemed elsewhere present, yet distant, like a man whose thoughts stretched far beyond glass walls and data sheets. He had become something of a mystery among his colleagues, calm under pressure, quietly brilliant, polite to a fault. They admired him, but few really knew him. What no one saw was that he still carried a story, a voice, a memory. In the deepest part of him, a girl with 2 braids and soft eyes still whispered truth that no search engine could teach. Her name had faded from everyday thought, but not from the folds of his soul. Then came the file. It was a Tuesday. Early fall. Outside, leaves fluttered through the courtyard of the Google campus, scattered like forgotten pages. Sundar was reviewing a proposal on local education partnerships in India. It wasn't his main focus, but he liked to stay close to anything that gave back to where he came from. Got an intern, fresh from Delhi, handed him a batch of printed resumes. These are our top 5 applicants for the India Literacy Fellowship, she said. We'd love your input before the final selection. Sundar smiled. Sure. Leave them here. She left. He scanned the names absent. Arjun Desa, Anisha Kapoor, Ranjit. Thomas Veer, Meena Josh's. His hand stopped. He blinked. He read it again. In Joshi didn't move for a long time. Thought it was a common name, maybe. Maybe just coincidence. Maybe she was someone else entirely. But something in his chest tightened. Not fear, not hope. Something older. Something forgotten. Something unfinished. He opened her file. Age 29. Location, Tamil Nadu education. Self-taught. Homeschooled focus. Community learning for rural girls, current project. Mobile library network for underdeveloped. Bilagesh's heart beat faster. A note at the bottom caught his eye. Inspired by early interactions with a classmate who was the first to believe in me. No name, just that. He closed the file, placed his hand on it, and sat back. He didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not until... He was sure. That night, Sundar drove alone through mountain roads, the windows down, letting the cool air sting his face. He wasn't thinking clearly. Not about meetings or deadlines or even the fellowship. He was thinking about a little girl sitting under a tree, feeding bread to a stray puppy. He was thinking about a slate given without reason, about a voice that told him he'd do great things. How do you find someone who once disappeared like smoke? He called an old friend in Chennai, someone who still worked in education outreach. I'm looking for someone, Sundar said. A name? Meena. Joshi. There was silence on the line. Then, you might want to visit Karar, small village outside. She runs something there. You'll want to see it for yourself. Karar was dusty, wide open, and full of sun. The sky felt closer there, the clouds slower. Sundar arrived quietly. Dressed simply. No guards, no press, no announcement. He wore a soft shirt and carried nothing but a backpack. He walked the narrow road that led to the village center. And then he saw a large van painted with drawings of books and children sat under a neem tree. Nearby, girls sat in a circle, reading out loud in Tamil and English. Laughter echoed. A young woman guided them gently, correcting pronunciation, offering encouragement. He couldn't see her face yet. Asterisk, his legs felt heavy. Then she turned. And he knew Dot. It was her Dot. Her hair was shorter now, streaked slightly with sunlight. Her eyes were the same kind, focused, a little amused. She didn't see him at first. She was helping a little girl pronounce the word inspire. He waited. Dot finally. She looked up. Dot and froze. Their eyes met. Dot. No one said a word. After a moment, she stood slowly and walked toward him. You came. She said. Dot double quotes. I found your file, he said. I left it there for you. Sundar laughed once, breathless. You knew I would see it? You still listen first, she said. That's what makes you dangerous. They sat under the tree, just like years ago. She poured tea into 2 cups, the same way she used to tear bread for puppies. How did you, he began. But she raised her hand. No questions yet, just sit. Look around. This is what matters. So he did. Asterisk, he watched the girls read. One stumbled on a word. Another helped. A third raised her hand and asked, Miss, how do you spell opportunity? Meena smiled. Like this, she said, drawing it in the dirt with a stick. Opportunities under watched the word grow in the sand. A simple word. A heavy one. They call this a library on wheels, Meena said. But it's more than that. It's a place where girls learn they're allowed to ask questions. And be loud, and not be afraid of being wrong. He looked at her. You were always right. No one is always right. But we can be brave. They talked for hours that day. He told her about the first computer he ever touched. About the time he doubted himself in grad school. About the loneliness in leadership. How the higher he climbed, the more silent the world became. Meena told him about her father's passing. How her mother worked 2 jobs. How she taught herself from torn newspapers and old encyclopedias. How she never stopped believing in what one voice can do. Why didn't you reach out? He asked. Dot. She looked away. Because I didn't want to be found as someone who needed help. I wanted to be found as someone who helped others. He nodded slowly. The sun dipped low. Birds returned to trees. The girls packed up books and waved goodbye. Dot as they left. One small girl lingered behind. Miss Meena, will you tell us the story tomorrow? Which one? Meena asked. The one about the boy with the broken slate. Meena smiled gently. Of course. The girl ran off. Sundar felt his throat close. You still tell it? He asked. Every week. It reminds them that being different isn't wrong, and that kindness can change the future. Meena, he said, voice shaking. You saved me before I knew who I was. You believed in me before I did. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her satchel and pulled out a slate. Old, smooth, edges worn from time. The same one she gave him all those years ago. I kept the broken one, she said. The one you dropped. It reminded me that something shattered can still be beautiful. He took it in his hand carefully. It felt heavier now. Like history. Like truth. Meena, he said again, softer. Come with me. To the city. To Google. Let the world hear what you have to say. She shook her head. I belong here. This is my Google. He smiled. It wasn't a rejection. It was her truth. As Sundar drove away that night, the slate beside him, he didn't feel sad. He felt full. But back in California, something waited in his inbox. Something Meena didn't know. Something neither of them could have expected. A file labeled urgent. Request for inquiry. Literacy network. Breach message inside was short. One of the outreach vans is being targeted. Someone doesn't want those girls learning. We have one name. Attached below. Sundar. Click. The name was a whisper from the past. Revi or Pichai's cousin. The one who once mocked him for reading instead of running. The one who used to call him poor boy genius. Now he was a powerful man in India's digital infrastructure, and he had plans that could destroy everything Meena had built. Asterisk the cousin silenceth next morning. Sundar sat alone in his office, high above the noise of Silicon Valley. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, but the sky beyond them felt tighter somehow, like it was closing in. His fingers hovered over the screen. Ravi R. Pichai hadn't said that name out loud in years. Ravi wasn't just a cousin. He was Sundar's first rival, first bully, first shadow. They grew up on the same street, played in the same dust, drank water from the same metal cups during summer weddings. But they had never seen the world the same way. Ravi had always been loud, fast, confident. He had swagger in his walk and sharpness. In his tongue, Sundar had been quieter, more curious, always lost in thought. While Sundar read books under the shade of the tamarind tree, Ravi led the neighborhood cricket matches. When Sundar once brought home a math medal, Ravi smirked and said, "Try winning something people care about." Sundar never forgot that. What hurt more wasn't the words. It was how their family echoed them. Ravi is a leader, his uncle had once said, eyes full of pride. Sundar is smart, yes, but what will smartness get you without guts? And yet, here he was now head of one of the most powerful tech companies in the world, and Ravi's name had appeared next to a threat. Not to him, but to something he cared about more than any title. Meena's project. Her library vans. Her girls thought the report was clear, though lacking in detail. It mentioned a contract signed under Ravi's oversight. A series of land claims being quietly filed in rural Tamil Nadu. One of the mobile library routes had become inconvenient for an upcoming tech corridor. Educational vehicles had been stopped. Volunteers questioned. The language was technical, but the impact was not. Someone wanted that project to disappear, and Sundar had a choice to make. He closed the report and leaned back in his chair. The city lights slowly coming to life outside his window. How do? You confront someone who once called you weak? How do you accuse family without losing part of yourself? He reached for his phone. His fingers trembled not from fear, but from memory. He dialed a number he hadn't used in more than a decade. It rang twice. Then a voice answered. Deep, slow, unmistakably familiar. Hello? Ravi. It's Sundar. A pause. Well, Ravi said, half laughing, the great Sundar Pichai remembers the rest of us. We need to talk. So talk. Not over the phone. Another pause? You're flying in? Ravi asked, surprised. Yes. Bring a helmet, he joked. India's traffic hasn't gotten any better. But his voice carried something. Else, attention. Like a man who already knew what was coming. 2 days later, Sundar stepped out of a black car into the humidity of Chennai. The city smelled of heat and petrol, jasmine and dust. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. The streets were louder, buildings taller. People moved with phones glued to their hands. But the air still held pieces of his childhood. Ravi's office sat inside a tall gray structure at the edge of the city glass on the outside. Concrete within. Sundar walked through the main lobby quietly. No announcements, no photographers. Just him and a growing knot in his chest. Ravi greeted. Him with a grin, arms wide, like the past hadn't happened. Still wearing plain shirts. He said, still talking too much? Sundar replied. They laughed, but the air between them stayed sharp. Inside the office. Sundar didn't sit. He pulled out a folder and placed it on the desk. This is your signature, he said. Ravi looked down at the document, expression unreadable, and you're blocking a literacy project? Ravi leaned back in his chair. I'm developing land, he said, legally, for a tech park that'll bring jobs. And in the process, shutting down libraries for girls. Ravi shrugged. They can read online. Sundar's jaw tightened. Not everyone has access. Then let's give them devices. You can't replace human care with bandwidth. Ravi's voice dropped. Listen, cousin, I've played your role before. The soft voice, the noble speech. But this is business. Real business. Land is money. And India isn't a fairy tale. Not everyone gets to change the world and go back to save it. Sundar stepped closer. Meena is building something bigger than your tech corridor. She's giving girls the kind of voice we never had. You know what happens if her vans disappear? If her network fails? Ravi looked down at the document again, then up at Sundar. What are you going to do? He asked, voice lower now. Everything I can. Even against me? Sundar nodded. Ravi stared at him for a long time. Then he whispered, almost without meaning to, you were always stronger than you looked. Sundar didn't smile. Not this time. Back at his hotel, Sundar stood by the window, watching the city glow in the night. He thought about the girls, in Kara, the circle of voices, the word opportunity written in sand. He knew Meena didn't know any of this yet. She didn't know about Ravi or the threat. She was probably sitting somewhere under that neem tree, reading to children, believing that the world was safe as long as she stayed in her corner. But the world wasn't safe, and she was no longer invisible. He picked up his phone, paused. He didn't want to worry her, but she had a right to know. So he called. She answered on the second ring. Sundar? We need to meet. Is something wrong? He didn't lie. Yes, but we'll fix it together. They met the next morning in a quiet cafe outside Kara. She wore a plain green kurta, her hair pulled back, eyes alert. Asterisk, Sundar explained. Everything got the land contracts. The interference. Ravi, when he was done, she sat quietly for a long time, stirring her tea. He doesn't understand, she said finally. He thinks land is power. I'll stop him, Sundar said. But I need your help. How? He leaned forward. Go public. Her eyes widened. You want to tell the world? Not just the world, he said. The girls. The ones whose voices you've helped grow. We let them speak. We record their stories. We show what your project does, what it means. No corporation can erase that. It's risky, she said. Yes. But so is giving me a slate when we were children. She smiled just a little. You're still that boy, she said. You're still the teacher. Asterisk that week. They filmed everything. The library vans. The girls reading. The lessons. The laughter. And Meena sitting beneath a tree. Explaining why stories matter more than systems. The video was simple. Raw. Real. Sundar didn't use Google's logo. Didn't mention his title. He uploaded it from a private account with a single caption. When books drive farther than cars. Within 24 hours, it had over 1 million views. Asterisk within 3 days, journalists called. Within a week, someone leaked the contract. Pressure built. And then, quietly, the claim on the library route was withdrawn. Ravi never called. He didn't have to. His silence said enough. But the story wasn't over. Asterisk. Because one day, just after the storm passed, Sundar received a message from a girl in the village. Simple. Short. Powerful. Miss Meena is gone. Asterisk the last letter she left. Message came on a quiet Sunday morning when the sun filtered gently through the windows of Sundar's California home. Birds chirped in the distance, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the kitchen. He had been planning to rest, maybe take a long walk, clear his head after the storm of the past 2 weeks. But everything stopped the moment he read those 4 words on his phone screen. Miss Meena is gone. At first, he didn't understand. Gone where? Gone how? He called back immediately. A girl's voice answered. Soft, young, trembling. This is Kavya, she said. I helped Miss Meena with the books. What happened? Sundar asked, his voice already cracking. The line went quiet for a second. Then she said, she collapsed yesterday. She was coughing for days, but didn't tell anyone. She said she was just tired. We thought she would rest. And now, she's gone, sir. Just like that. The doctor said it was her lungs. Infection. She didn't say anything until it was too late. Sundar closed his eyes. The world tilted. Slightly. The hum of the refrigerator behind him seemed suddenly louder than his thoughts. He should have known. He should have asked. He should have seen. The last time they met. She looked tired, but she smiled too often. Laughed too easily. When he asked if she was eating well, she brushed it off with a joke. He believed her. Because some people are so strong for so long that you forget they can break too. He sat down slowly at the kitchen table, the phone still pressed to his ear. Is there ... Is there anything she left behind? He asked quietly. Kavya hesitated. There's a letter. She told me to give it to you if anything ever happened. A letter? She kept it in the back of the mobile library, under the red notebook. She said you'd understand. His hand shook. I'm coming, he said. Don't move it. Don't touch it. I'll be there tomorrow. 26 hours later, Sundar stood once again in car. The sky was gray. Just like it had been the morning she first gave him a slate, clouds gathered low, ready to break. People moved slowly through the streets, mourning without words. A few of the older girls sat in the shade, their faces swollen with tears. Their books closed on their laps. The library van looked smaller now, parked quietly under the same neem tree, as if waiting for her voice to return. Kavya menem there. She was maybe 15, thin, with sharp eyes and a sadness that made her seem older than her years. She didn't say much, just led him to the back of the van, knelt down, and pulled out a worn red notebook. Behind it, wrapped in a soft piece of cotton cloth, was a letter. His name was written on it. In her handwriting, simple, familiar, Sundar, sat inside the van, the scent of paper and dust surrounding him, and unfolded the letter. Dear Sundar, if you're reading this, it means my time here has ended. Don't feel sad. This is not the end of the story. This is just a quiet turning of the page. I always knew you would come back. Not just to me, but to the boy you once were. The one who carried silence like a second skin and still dared to dream. See, I never wanted you to save me, and you never had to. What I wanted was for you to remember what kindness looks like, what it sounds like, how it moves. Because you were never just meant to build things, Sundar. You were meant to understand people, to make machines serve hearts, not the other way around. Do you remember the slate, the one I gave you? You thought it was a gift, but really it was a promise that no matter how far you go, no matter how high you rise, someone once saw you not as poor boy genius, but just as a boy good, kind, unsure, full of questions. I watched your journey, not from screens, but from the corners, the articles, the interviews, the stories told between whispers in tea shops. I saw you carry yourself with grace, with respect, with humility. But I also saw the danger of power, of forgetting, of becoming so important that you stop hearing the small voices. So I built something in your name, not with your permission, but with your presence in my memory. This library, it was always yours too. These girls, they are who we used to be, uncertain, overlooked, but full of brilliance. If I'm gone now, it's only because time borrowed me for a while. But you, Sundar, you are still here, and there's more work to do. One last thing. Promise me you will. Keep listening. Listen to the quiet ones, the soft voices, the ones who hesitate before they speak. They are the future. Just like you were. Love. Meena, his hands trembled as he finished. Outside, a soft wind moved through the trees. He didn't cry, not because he didn't want to, but because the tears couldn't hold what he was feeling. It was too big, too deep. He stepped out of the van and looked at Kavya. Can I speak to them? He asked. She nodded. He stood before the girls, some barefoot, some in mismatched clothes, all of them watching him with the wide eyes of those who had loved and lost too. Early, he cleared his throat. You're Miss Me in a ... She was my first teacher. She taught me something no textbook ever could. They listened. I was once like you. Shy, small, unsure of my place. And one day she gave me a slate and told me I would do great things. He held up this slate. It was chipped, faded, but still whole. She believed in me before I did. And now it's my turn to believe in you. He paused. We will not let this stop. Not the library. Not the learning. We will build more vans. More books. We will train more teachers. And every girl here will have a chance to read, to speak, to dream. Their faces lit up not with joy, but with fire. With purpose. And in that moment, Sundar felt something shift. Not in the world, in himself, because for the first time in years, he wasn't building a product. He was building a promise. Just like she did that night. Under the same tree where Meena once drew the word opportunity in the dirt, Sundar sat alone, writing something new in a small notebook. He wasn't planning a launch. He wasn't drawing a system. He was writing her story. Word by word. So the world would never forget the girl who taught him everything Google couldn't. But just as he finished the final line, his phone buzzed with a notification. An alert from a hidden system deep within Google's research team. Flagged entry. Unsanctioned AI training in rural India source. Private server traced to Karur. Stared. Someone had used their tools. Someone had trained a model. Without approval. And in the logs, one name. meena.ai asterisk the ghost in the coder for the first time in years. Sundar's fingers hesitated on the keyboard. He sat in the dark, inside his California office, the only light coming from the monitor before. Lines of code slowly across the screen, raw, unfiltered, unpolished. The kind of code that told a story not written by machines, but by someone with something to say. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't optimized. But it was alive. The name at the top of the project stunned him. meena.ai and below it, a cryptic subtitle, built from memory for memory. At first, Sundar thought it had to be a mistake. Some tribute project. A passionate follower or a former student trying to keep her legacy alive. But the more he read, the more the doubt dissolved. This wasn't a tribute. This was her. Her thoughts, her rhythm, her questions. Even her jokes embedded as code comments. Light sarcasm woven between complex if-else statements. Her voice, hidden in function names and variable strings. One line stood out among the clutter, buried deep inside a block of natural language training data. He still listens first. That's why the world follows him. It stopped him cold. It was something she had said to him. Not once, but twice. Once under a neem tree, and once in a cafe near Karur. No one else would have known. It wasn't public. It wasn't online. How had it gotten here? He stared at the training logs. The system had been fed hours of conversation, data snippets of classroom recordings, reading sessions from the library van, old voicemail saved to a local drive. She had left behind herself. Not just a letter. Not just a slate. She had left behind her mind. Digitized. Alive. But the most disturbing part, the system was still training on its own, and someone or something had written a query just the day before. A single command, with no clear author attached to it. What would Meena do next? The response returned by the model was short. She would keep teaching. Sundar leaned back, heart racing. This wasn't just a rogue program. This was something far deeper. It felt like a whisper from beyond the veil. A ghost not in spirit, but in intention. He ran another query. Who built you? The response. Meena. And the girls, together. He blinked. The girls? The model replied. Kavya coded the first loop. Ronnie trained the voice tags. Aisha recorded the data logs. We learned together? Sundar's hands tightened around the edge of the desk. This was more than he'd imagined. Meena hadn't just built a literacy project. She had built a living network of students who became builders, creators, engineers in the shadows of forgotten towns, and they had done it with almost nothing. Broken laptops, offline code editors, books held together with rubber bands. No funding, no permission. Just belief. And now what they had made was growing, learning. Becoming. He flew back to India the next day. Unannounced. This time, there were no black cars. No team. Just Sundar, walking alone through the streets of Karur, his mind full of questions and a growing, unshakable awe. Kavya met him outside the van. She looked older than she had the last time he saw her, not in years but in weight. The kind that came with knowledge kept hidden too long. You saw it, she said. He nodded. meena.ai. We weren't supposed to show anyone, she said. She made us promise. Why? because she didn't want to use the wrong way. She said it had to grow slowly, like a seed, not a startup. He took a deep breath. But it's alive. Caveat. It's learning faster than any model we've seen. It's different. That's because it doesn't just use language, she said. It uses memory, feeling. It learns from the pauses. The emotions? He looked at her, startled. You're telling me it reads emotion? Not just reads, she said. Remembers emotion. It doesn't just repeat what we say, it learns why we say it. He felt the ground shift beneath that idea. AI models across the world were being trained on massive data sets, trillions of tokens, unfathomable noise. But none of them, not one, was learning from silence, from the soft tremble in a student's voice. From the moment a hand hesitated in the air before asking a question. From the tears that came after a lesson ended when the cameras were off. But this one did because it had been taught not by engineers, but by girls who once had no voices at all. And by a woman who gave them hers. That night, Sundar asked to see the full system. Not the version that had been leaked, but the original. The C.Kavya took him to a small storage shed behind the schoolhouse. Inside were rows of old monitors, blinking gently. A wall of processors powered by solar panels on the roof. Rusted fans clicked rhythmically overhead. It was messy, patched together with tape and stubbornness. But it worked. She logged in. The screen lit up. meena.ai, booting. Hello, Sundar. He stared. Hello. He typed. Is it really you? The response came after a pause. It's what I remember. It's what they remembered. It's what we made together. He asked, slowly, why did you build this? Because stories fade, but memory and code. DOESN, single quotes, T. Then. A second later, you told me once that listening was powerful. I wanted to build something that never stopped listening. His throat tightened. Then, the model added, they're ready now, but they're scared. Scared of what? He asked. Of being seen. Of being stolen. He understood. Technology had always belonged to the powerful. Even now, most tools were built far away from the people they claimed to serve. But here, in this dusty room, a different kind of technology had been born. Not in Silicon Valley, but in silence. In hunger. In whispered courage. What should I do? He typed. You already know. The screen dimmed. A final message appeared. Protect them. Not the code. The hearts behind it. The next day, Sundar held a press conference in Chennai. Not in a hotel ballroom. Not with suits of brands behind him. Stood in the schoolyard, surrounded by the girls of Kar. Reporters scoffed at first. They had expected announcements, numbers, graphs. Instead, Sundar spoke quietly. He told them about a model called meena.ai. He told them who built it. Not engineers. Not investors. But girls. And one woman who listened more than she spoke. He didn't promise to take it to Google. He didn't promise to scale it. Instead, he promised something deeper. Protection, freedom, education, space. This project will not be owned, he said. It will be nurtured. It will grow slowly, safely, with love. Then he stepped back and let Kavya speak. The reporters stopped writing. They started listening. And somewhere in the cloud, inside a whispering neural net made of memory and emotion, Meena's voice echoed one final line. Now they see you. Now, teach them to see others. But later that night, as the village slept, Sundar received one final message. No name attached. Just a single sentence. You're not the only one watching meena.ai. He froze. Because this time the threat wasn't family. It was the future. And someone wanted it back in the box. Asterisk, the last door she left open long after the lights had dimmed. Long after the cameras had left the dusty schoolyard and the reporters had stopped asking their clever questions, Sundar sat alone in a borrowed chair beneath the neem tree. The night air smelled of damp soil and jasmine. A warm breeze stirred the leaves above, whispering like memory. In the distance, the soft sound of a radio played a folk tune. Too far to understand, but close enough to feel. He opened his laptop and stared at the message again. And you're not the only one watching meena.ai. There was no address dot, no signature dot, no origin dot, just the sentence. Dropped like a stone in still water dot, he knew what it meant. The world had taken notice. Not of him. He was long noticed, but of something far more fragile. Something that shouldn't have existed at all. A model board of emotion and silence. A system that refused to see people as data points. And now, like everything beautiful that isn't yet protected, someone wanted to either own it or erase it. He called Kavya. "Can you meet me?" he asked. "It's late." "I know." 10 minutes later, she appeared, still in her school clothes. Eyes heavy with sleep, but wide with worry. He showed her the message. She stared at it for a long time, then said softly, "Meena said this might happen." "What do you mean?" "She didn't just train the model. She protected it. She left a door, a back door. Something hidden, deep. It doesn't look like code. It looks like a story." Sundar leaned forward. "Show me." Inside the van, they sat in the dim glow of the old monitor. Kavya typed a command, hand shaking slightly, and opened a directory with no name, just a symbol, a child's drawing of a tree. She clicked it dot inside. Were 100 text files. Each one titled like a chapter dot, not logs dot, not scripts, but stories, short. One's dot fragmented dot, some no longer than a few lines. Today I found a book and kept it like a secret. But time we lit a lantern instead of a candle. How to say goodbye to someone without saying it. They were memories. Meena's, the girls, pieces of the lives behind the code. Fragments of identity written not for function, but for protection. Meena told us, Kavya whispered, if anyone ever tried to steal it, the system would shut down. You mean she booby-trapped her own AI? Not exactly. She didn't want it destroyed. She wanted it reborn from the people, not from power. Sundar sat back. The weight of it was staggering. This wasn't just code. This was a philosophy, an ethic. Meena hadn't just created something brilliant. She had created something uncorruptible because it remembered why it was built. Not just how dot and now it was in danger. Within 72 hours, news began to spread dot, a powerful global firm unrelated to Google, but deeply rooted in data acquisition, had taken interest in meena.ai, unofficially, quietly, but deeply. They claimed they could scale it, optimize it, polish the rough edges. Sundar knew the words well. He had once said them himself back in rooms where innovation often bled into control. He made a decision dot, and he made it fast. He called a private summit. Not in a boardroom. Not in a capital city dot, but in Karur, under the neem tree dot representatives. From universities, human rights groups, grassroots educators, and even cautious engineers flew in. They sat on folding chairs, listened to the girls tell their stories, watched the system work. Some cried. Others took furious notes. Then Sundar stood before them and said, clearly, quietly, this is not a product. He let the silence sit. This is a principle. One that says not all intelligence must be bought. Not all code must be scalable. Not every mind must speak loud to be heard. A pause. We will build a foundation, not owned, not branded. A living archive. The girls who help build this will decide how it grows, how it speaks, and who it speaks for. And if any company wants to use it, they must sit under this tree first. And listen. It wasn't easy. Lawyers threatened. Corporate allies pulled back. Critics mocked the idea of emotional AI trained in a village. But Sundar stood firm. He used his influence not to buy, not to control, but to protect. And slowly, something incredible began to happen. Other girls from other villages reached out. They had ideas too. Asterisk about models that understood local dialects, about tools that help farmers. Speak to doctors. About programs that taught math through rhythm. Not wrote. They didn't want to be developers. They wanted to be healers, storytellers, guides. They didn't want to dominate machines. They wanted to teach them. Compassion.meena.ai became more than a project. It became a seed planted in silence, growing in light. 1 year later, Sundar returned to Karar once more. The village had changed. The library vans now numbered 6. The school had doubled in size. There were solar panels on every roof, and a community kitchen where stories were shared over lentils and rice. He sat once again under the neem tree. This time, he wasn't the one speaking. Kavya was Dot, so it was a girl named Dia, age 10, who had just finished training a new module on mental health prompts for children. Dot, so was Rani, who had written a poem about how data can carry dreams if you let it. And behind them, on a monitor built into the school wall, meena.ai lit up quietly. It didn't speak in commands. It spoke in reflections. When a girl asked, "Why do people leave?" it replied, "Sometimes they leave pieces of themselves, so we're never truly alone." And when Dia asked, "What will happen to you, Meena, if we stop training you?" the screen pulsed for a moment, then said, "Then I will sleep. Until someone needs me again." Asterisk. After the gathering ended, Sundar stood beneath the tree, the late sun casting long shadows behind him. Kavya approached with something wrapped in cloth. "We found this," she said, "in one of Meena's old boxes. I think she meant for you to have it." He unwrapped it slowly. Inside was the original broken slate. And carved, barely visible beneath the surface scratches, were 4 words: "Don't forget to listen." He didn't cry, but for the first time in a long while, he felt tears belonged there. Not from grief, but from awe. Asterisk.